Welcome to the Elevate podcast, brought to you by the Registered Master Builders. Each week we explore the ideas and practices that help us get the best from our businesses, our teams and ourselves. I'm your host, Ryan Castle. We talk to experts, advocates and business owners in the construction industry to share their knowledge, insights and experiences to help you build a better business and enjoy a better life. Now let the business building begin. Welcome along to the Master Builders Elevate podcast, and I have two very special guests with me today that have collaborated on an incredible project, which we're going to dive into today. I'm joined by Ross Faulkner of Faulkner Construction and Natasha Markham of Markham Architecture and Urban Design. Welcome along to the podcast, both of you.
Good, Ryan. Thanks for having us.
I'm looking forward to our discussion. Maybe, Natasha, could you lead us off and give us a bit of background to you and your role and how you've ended up in the construction industry?
Sure, Ryan. Well, I'm an architect in training, and then more latterly, I've worked in urban design as well. And so I've really had a foot in both camps over the last 25 odd years. I founded my practice, Maud, Markham Architecture and Urban Design, about 8 years ago. And we're a boutique practice that specialises in well-crafted residential and commercial projects across a range of scales. I guess the other sort of interesting thing is that I also co-host a podcast called 76 Small Rooms about architecture. So for me, it's a delight to be on the other side of the mic for a change and a new experience in that sense.
Oh, good sign, Natasha, and the audience listening will be able to finish this episode and go straight over to, what is it called, 76 rooms?
76 small rooms.
76 more rooms and get some more hotel. And how about yourself, Ross? Are you also moonlighting as a podcast host?
No, not my strength, fortunately. I got involved in the building industry probably just over 40-something years ago now. I won't say how many years ago I was, but love the building industry and love the challenges that it brings. And that's something that has always got me out of bed in the morning is what the challenges going to bring for the day. And I'm steered away from the easier jobs and always aim for the more challenging jobs because that's where I've got my thrills for. Be able to see a job come to completion that's been specifically challenging in certain ways. I did an apprenticeship many years ago and set up my own business. Just almost 40 years ago now, and have been very passionate about it. I've got involved in the Master Builders organisation 25 years ago, and I was on the Auckland board for 18 years, I think it was, at the end of the day, and spent the last 2 years of that as the Auckland president. Got tasked to get involved with the New Zealand Institute of Architects on a joint contracts committee, so I've been the residential representative there, and I've also been involved with the BCITO, which is through tip booking, for quite a few years, and as the National Advisory Group chair of the carpentry sector, so fully involved in the industry and also employed a lot of apprentices over the years.
Yeah, outstanding, Ross, and so many volunteer hours for you there and the contributions you've made to Master Builders and some of those other organisations. So thanks for the contribution to the industry. Maybe before we get into the project that we're going to talk about today, Ross, I'd be interested, you've been involved in the industry for 4 decades. What would you observe as the biggest change you've seen happen in the industry in that time, do you think?
Well, we used to use hand meters for drills and push drills and Yagi screwdrivers and things like that, which is something you don't see these days. And now you have battery-powered saws that do everything and more. It's a quite revolution we've gone on with the battery-powered tools.
I was going to say, in addition to those technical changes, one of the observations that I really noticed is that it's no longer enough for builders to be good craftsmen alone, that, your role as sort of administrators and kind of responding to all of those other pressures has really increased even in my relatively short time in the industry. And I sort of that the job for builders and actually for anyone in the construction industry is potentially more complex than it used to be.
Understandable. All right, Tim, let's turn our attention to the project that you collaborated on. I assume, Natasha, the project came to you first because it was not only you working as the architect, but it was also your home, I believe, that was worked on. So do you want to give us some background to how the project came about, and then we'll get Ross's perspective?
Sure. Well, it was a project that was always waiting to happen for us. Architects are not unlike builders in that sense. So we'd actually lived in the home for about 7 years before we were ready to initiate a tender process for the construction of the changes. And I think in terms of timing, we couldn't probably have asked for more challenging times. I think partway through the tender process, we were hit with the first lockdown in response to COVID. So that was a challenge. And then, of course, during the build time, we had significant lockdowns here in Auckland, which were something that nobody could have foreseen in terms of the challenges that they provided to the process. So I guess it was just a real thrill to see the project and the team receive fantastic recognition, certainly at the local branch Master Builder Awards and also through the Architectural Design Awards as well. It's sort of, I think, a real pat on the back to everyone involved.
And Natasha, tell us a bit about the personal journey of this home. What was it that attracted you to buy it in the first place? And did you always have a plan when you bought it? You always knew you were going to extend it and do some significant change, or how's that come about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're long-time residents in this area in Auckland. And so we purchased the home with the intention to do something with it. The attraction was that it hadn't really been touched for about 40 years. So there was a significant amount of, I guess you would call it, remedial work required, as well as the potential for an addition to make it a modern home. The home is located in a special character area in Auckland, so it comes with some quite strict rules around the way that it can be renovated in terms of conforming to heritage controls in the area. But, we just sort of saw that as part and parcel of what we were working with. And, always love a challenge, as does Ross and the team, to sort of see how we could work with those, but also make a contemporary home in the process.
Nice. And for those of you listening who are more visual in orientation, we will have a link to an excellent video which demonstrates the home and what's been achieved in it. We'll put that in the show notes, so you can go and have a look at that after the episode. Ross, how did you first get involved in this project?
Yeah, well, we got approached by Natasha originally through a recommendation from another architect that we'd done a lot of work with. And we'd been a lot of character homes like this. And I think when we met Natasha, we had a good affinity with each other and worked pretty well. And I'm glad she chose us for this project.
And I'm really interested to learn from both of you. How did you know that it was going to be a good fit? Do you have a criteria, Natasha, when you're selecting a builder? Because yes, this was your own project, but I'm sure you're involved in it in other client projects. And then Ross, I'd be interested to hear from you. What is it that you look for in a client that you're going to work on beside Epic Challenge, which we heard you say at the beginning was something you look for? So Natasha, maybe back to you first.
Sure. I mean, we're quite careful about who we work with. If we're working for other clients, we want to have confidence that the building team are going to finish the project and interpret the detailing in a way that is consistent with the intent of the design that we've often worked with our clients on for, in some cases, years. So that was really important to us always. I think it's helpful. We do take recommendations from other architects if we haven't worked with builders before or other kind of respected people in the industry. I think in terms of what, gave us a kind of signal that the Faulkner team would be a good fit for us were a couple of things. Firstly, as I mentioned, we ran the tender process over a really challenging time, and Ross and the team didn't skip a beat in terms of the response to issues and kind of just really following through. But the other thing was that there are a number of features within the home that were a little bit experimental. I mean, I think there's an opportunity if you're doing your own home to probably push ideas that you might not be able to do so with clients. So we've got some brick floors that are use heritage bricks that were recycled from the site. And Ross's response to that was like, oh, that looks really interesting. Let's see how we can make that happen. So I sort of had a fairly good hunch that the team would be great to work with and sort of solutions focused, which is always a really nice thing to kind of hear.
And Ross, how about from your perspective, what are you looking for when you're working with an architect?
It's personalities. there's some people you get a bit of a bad feel for, and some you get a good feel for. And I've always tried to listen to my gut when I choose a client, and the people are on a similar kind of wavelength and have a similar kind of principles to what I have. Very important that I have faith that the person's genuine. It's very important you have a good relationship with the clients and the architect. Also very important the architect is willing to listen, achieve the best outcome there. And Natasha was great.
Well, I think there's all conversations that go on a regular basis. And I think it's really important for us to be able to express the design intent and be able to put forward an idea about how something might happen, but to treat it as an open dialogue, because actually at the end of the day, what we're trying to all achieve is a great outcome on site. And to a certain extent, there's always a number of different ways to go about something, but to be able to have that dialogue to say, well, actually, have you thought about it this way? And sometimes there might be something that one team brings up that becomes a solution. Sometimes there's something from the other side. And sometimes it's actually the conversation that presents a new third way of doing something that wasn't immediately obvious to either of us. So I think that that openness to dialogue is super, super important. And that focus on the end goal, which is common to everybody, that's fundamental.
And Natasha, can you take us on a bit of a journey about what the villa was like pre-extension? What was it like to live in? What were you trying to achieve with the extension? How was it going to shape the different way you lived in the house? What was the dream?
Well, the villa to live in previously was probably like all of your villa horror stories. It was cold and it was drafty, and because of the classic nature of villa plans, we tended to live from room to room, which, was probably great for the Victorians, but it's not how any of us live today. So there were sort of several key aims with the design and with the renovation process. One was to create a home that responded to contemporary ways of living, family home. The other one is that to respond to the topography, the house itself, actually, the villa sits on a ridge with a fall to the street one way and to the northern garden on the rear private side. So the new addition actually drops the living down to that garden, which means that we now have a home that is much more connected to our outdoor space, which previously didn't happen. And then I guess the third thing was to sort of create a home that was sort of warm and dry and all of those other functional requirements that make living more comfortable in the 21st century.
I love it. Brilliant. We talk a lot about sustainability in our industry. We don't have a spectacular track record right now. The amount of waste that construction creates is nothing for us to be proud of. How did you think about sustainability, both in a building process and a design process? So maybe, Ross, if we come to you and talk about what your approach was to sustainability from a construction zone, and then Natasha will come back to you.
There's a lot of good carry that we got out of the match lining and that, which is a lot thicker than normal in places. So we were very conscious that we didn't want to get rid of any of that. We kept that aside to use for the new flooring that we made out of the boards, new skirtings. We did a bit of shelving, all the stair overlays we took out of this timber. So there's quite a bit of beautiful timber to work with.
And Natasha, from a design perspective, how did you think about incorporating sustainability approach?
That reuse of materials was a part of the design criteria right from the get-go. And as I mentioned, the opportunity to do your own home is also an opportunity to experiment, both in terms of the design outcomes, but actually in terms of that building process as well. So we did try and recycle elements from the home, that match lining that was stripped off so that we could insulate the walls. We also salvaged bricks on site. I mean, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, these are relatively small moves, but I think if you can start small, then you can look how you can grow that in projects as you move forward. The other thing that was really important from a design perspective was just looking at the energy use of the home. So we've installed PV panels on the roof, but I also looked very closely at the specification of systems within the home for heating and hot water heating, and also our appliances to try and ensure that the draw from those aspects was, as low as I could get it, so that we could balance our energy consumption and production as closely as possible.
And Natasha, for some who may not be familiar, a PV panel, is that a type of solar panel, or what is that?
PV panel stands for photovoltaic panel. So that's a solar panel on your roof that transfers solar energy into DC current. I guess how that differs from what people may have thought of as solar panels in the past is traditionally some of those solar panels have been used to heat hot water, either for a hot water system or a panel. This allows you to use that energy in a broader sense within the home.
Right. So you can use it to charge your iPhone as well.
Yes, you can.
Very, very important. Brilliant. And this home went on to win in the National House of the Year, won the category of renovation over 1.5 million. Ross, tell me, what was the emotion like? You're sitting there in the audience, you're waiting for it to be announced, you're one of the nominees as a finalist. What were you thinking heading into the announcement, and then what was it like to actually hear that announcement and then accept the award?
It was interesting that those nights the categories are given out with gold, silver and bronze to start with, and you always sit there very nervously, but we'd won the gold. We were certainly elated when we heard our names. Fantastic result for all the guys, and it was really great night. Not only that, but we also won the craftsmanship award.
I think that was a real thrill from my end too, Ross, to see your team recognised for the craftsmanship award. I thought that was so well deserved, and I know that it meant a lot to you, and I think actually for us it was that was probably the most thrilling moment.
Yeah, very special.
Outstanding. And as construction companies, I don't think we ever set out to do something just to get the award and the reward. It's about doing a good project, and then this feels like just epic icing on the cake when you get public recognition for what you've achieved. So well done. Look, I'm interested, no build, no project is perfect. I'm interested to hear one thing now with the benefit of hindsight that you might do a little bit differently if you were to do a project again, and also one thing that you were just like, we absolutely nailed that and it was so good, so we do that on every project. What would be those two examples from each of you? Tasha, you want to go first?
Stumped.
That's probably a good thing. It's probably a good thing if there was no big disasters that you'd be going, oh my gosh, we certainly wouldn't do that again. So that's probably a good sign.
Well, it's not that challenges didn't come up. I mean, there were so many factors to consider, particularly in terms of the build process. But I think that was the thing. It was a process, and you work through them. And so I don't think that there were any big regrets in that sense. The issues were managed, and that's what you would hope for in any project. You scope things as well as you can, so to avoid difficult things on site. Inevitably, something comes up in any project, but it's how you deal with it. And in that sense, I think everything was managed pretty well in the end. I don't know. What do you think, Ross?
Yeah, I hesitated when I heard the question too. I don't think there was anything. The whole villa was being supported on the new work that we were providing underneath, and we had these big trucks that were just squeezing underneath these branches that have been propped up to try and look after them. Roots appearing underneath the house where they shouldn't be, and getting a swimming pool at the back of the house as well, and not having any room ready on the back of the house to store goods. So it was a really good challenge, but nothing I'd do differently, actually.
Outstanding. And I guess that's part of also what makes it exciting for the build team is that it's all about perspective, right? One is to call everything you do as a challenge, one to say, hey, there's something unique and interesting here about what we're doing. So, how do we find a solution to it, which is possibly a little more interesting than doing the same build every single day, cookie cutter type building. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with that approach. It's suitable for a certain part of the market, but I can see how this kind of project keeps your team really interested with the challenges that come along with it.
It does.
If you were to think about, you were very new, you've just started an architecture practice or you've just started a construction company, what worldly advice would you give?
Great question. I mean, I think be curious, scope as much as you can beforehand. I mean, we put a lot of energy in at the very beginning of a project to find out as much as we can about the site or the building or the neighbourhood, doing that work up front. The old sort of measure twice, cut once, it applies in design as well as on a building site. That's absolutely important. We're hoping by the time we get to being on site that we've minimised the changes as much as possible. And I think plan ahead, have open conversations. Walk into things with a certain degree of openness.
Yeah, I've heard that open-minded communication right through this episode from both of you about just how important that is as a critical factor for success. And no surprise, it's an element that comes up whether we're talking to our legal experts on the podcast about how best to avoid getting into tricky situations. It's about communication. And it sounds like you guys are echoing that. Ross, how about from you? What advice would you give to someone starting out in their construction journey?
Make sure you know what you're doing. Put the project in your mind to get on board with it and fully understand the challenges of the project and find a way in your own mind that you're going to meet that challenge and beat it. If you don't think you can do it, get out of it. But if you think you can do it and you understand what you're getting involved in, you'll be all right.
Good advice. Team, look, thank you so much for sharing some insights about this project. I have seen the video, which we'll have in the show notes. It's an incredible design. Natasha, well done to you. And then Ross, to you and your team being able to execute that design and bring it to fruition. It's really an incredible piece of work. So congratulations to both of you and to your teams for bringing it together. It's really quite spectacular. If any of our listeners would like to connect with you directly, what would be the best way to get in contact, Natasha?
Well, you can check out our website, www.maud.nz. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I guess our podcast is on SoundCloud and Spotify and all of those great places as well.
Nice. And Ross, you and your team?
Yes, you can look for us on Faulkner Construction website, which is www.fclnz.com.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure we, again, put those website addresses, podcast links, etc., into the show notes so people can find them nice and easily with a single click. Hey, thank you both for joining us on the podcast today. We appreciate you sharing the experience. It's been a joy to have a conversation with you both.